Yes, Honourable Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. This is the final budget debate before the next general election in Barbados, whenever I determine that that election should be called. And I'm therefore very pleased to stand in this House tonight to contribute to the debate on what has been one of the best financial statements and budgetary proposals to be introduced to this House since Barbados came to independence in 1966. And I want to congratulate the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northwest on the courage and the creativity of which the budgetary proposals are so resplendent an example. I should like also to congratulate all honourable members on this side of the House, both on the front bench and on the back bench, for the stellar performances which were evident from them during this debate. They put the government's case with clarity and with cogency, and they can feel proud of themselves. I do not want to be invidious by singling out any particular member on this side. All of the contributions were quite good contributions, and the government side has clearly demonstrated that it is ready to go to the people whenever that time comes to give courageous account of an impressive stewardship. I also listened to the contributions coming from the other side of the House. It is really most unfortunate that in the 46th year now of Barbados' independence, that you have an opposition party that is actually angry about the fact that Barbados is doing well. They hate the fact that the country is stable, hate the fact that the government has not had to resort to measures to create instability in Barbados, and giving vent to that anger in some of the strangest and most undignified ways I've seen in this Parliament since independence. But your anger will have to continue, because we're going to continue to do well, this Democratic Labour Party government. We listened to the contribution of the Honourable Member for St. Peter. I really listened. It is always good to see him here. I think the 4 hours he spent for the budget, and the 4 hours he spent for the reply, and the half an hour he spent this evening speaking, make up about 20 hours he spent in this House since January the 20th, since he lost office in January 2008. He's not been coming here, so whenever he comes here, we're glad to see him, even if he has very little of substance to say. Now, Mr. Speaker, I believe it was the Honourable Member for St. George South who, at the tail end of her speech, quoted from J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series, so attractive to young people. And she was quite right when she quoted Professor Dumbledore speaking to Harry Potter and telling him, Harry, it is not our abilities that determine what we are. It is the choices that we make. It is not our abilities that determine what we are. It is the choices that we make. And ever since we came to office in January 2008, Mr. Speaker, we have had to make choices on the issue of the management of this country's affairs. And we have made choices which, in retrospect, we can feel proud about, because in the context of the Barbados we have had to manage, and in the context of the world in which we've had to manage that Barbados, we have done an excellent job by anybody's standards. So, we've made our choices, and we stand by our choices. Obviously, honourable members on the other side, given a chance, or given the chance, would have made other choices. So be it. When we sat on that side of the House, very often we did not agree with the choices that they made, but it was their right to make the choices. We have made our choices, and Barbados can feel comfortable tonight that it has a government that has managed this country through the worst crisis the world has seen in the last 100 years, and managed the country successfully. It has not been painless, obviously, given the gravity of the international economic situation. It has not been painless, but on any objective evaluation, we have done a commendable job. I listened to the honourable member for St. Michael North East yesterday evening for 4 hours and 3 minutes. I always like to listen, Mr. Speaker, because I like to hear what is the case the government has to answer. The honourable member highlighted a number of issues which she said constituted the foundation on which she was building her speech. She said she was talking about inflation, she was talking about the deficit, she was talking about a crisis in tourism and international business, she was talking about the pauperization of her households, she was talking about an implementation deficit, and then, of course, she summed all this up by saying that the budget was a budget for credit rating agencies. And the thesis of the honourable member's speech yesterday evening for 4 hours and 3 minutes, I mean, it was the usual rag bag of political odds and ends. But to the extent that you could, to the extent that you could find a theme in it, the honourable member was saying the government could do better. Now, if that is the thesis of a speech, it is always possible to do better. That is not a charge against the government. It is always possible to allege that people can do better. The point is that this government made choices. Nobody on this side claims to be perfect, but we are comfortable with the choices which we have made. Now, the honourable member's speech yesterday contrasted sharply with speeches which we were hearing in this House from the honourable member when there was an obvious cleavage between that honorable member and her leader after the political assassination that took place coming on to the end of 2010. These stratospheric speeches that were being made in here, the calls for bipartisanship, all that went through the window once the honorable member for St. Peter gave the honorable member for St. Michael Northeast the opportunity to reply to the budget and, of course, to reply to the estimates. He having come to the conclusion that he could not assign so serious a responsibility to the deputy leader of the opposition, the honorable member for St. Joseph. And the honorable member for St. Michael South Central is right. I warned honorable members on this side not to become too carried away by the appearance of penitence on the part of the honorable member for St. Michael Northeast. Not to be carried away by these stratospheric speeches being made in here. Not to be carried away by her desertion of the opposition lunch table and coming to dine with us in the immediate aftermath of her being wounded coming on to the end of 2010. I knew that once she got over that, and of course the honorable member for St. Peter, he has her measure. Whenever he wants to see her do her thing, he just has to pull her string. He has her measure. So I knew that once he had pushed her into a corner, banished her to gawky for a little while, she would behave in that way. But once he went then and tried to appease her by throwing a little salt to Cerberus, that we would see the real member for St. Michael Northeast again. I have to confess, I like to make confessions. I actually like the honorable member for St. Michael Northeast. I do. It just happens that my friendships do not rest only on the people that I like. More importantly, they rest on the people that I trust. And the quite frank truth is, Mr. Speaker, that in politics, I have never trusted the honorable member of St. Michael Northeast any further than I could throw the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. Anybody who can change views as easily as that honorable member and whose convictions have so short a shelf life is, in my view, unsafe to be around. But I listened yesterday, because if you ask the question of any human being, what would that human being do? What are the things that that human being would do? There are thousands, perhaps millions of answers you could get to that question. So that is not the most important question you ask about any human being. The most important question you ask about any human being is, what would that human being never do? And if you can't get an answer to that question quickly, you are not safe. Now, I listened to the speech yesterday. The government can do better. And I heard all the talk about giving back. The persons who were getting the 2 pensions, all of their money, and the whole washpan of promises that was thrown at the public of Barbados yesterday. I do not know why the honorable member thinks that that performance yesterday has added anything to her credibility or to the credibility of the Barbados Labour Party. It is well known that so far as though that two-pension issue is concerned, that from 1975, the law was passed, the law was changed, or a law was passed, August 1975, to enact that any person coming to the public service after the 1st of September 1975 would not be entitled to get two pensions at the time of retirement. That was known since 1975. When I checked the files at the Ministry of the Civil Service and around the Cabinet Office, the files reveal that public servants at that time were circularized and informed that this was going to be the position. I took a particular interest in the matter because in 1975, the Democratic Labour Party was still in office. It has emerged that as a result of the oversight of government departments, the relevant government departments, that some persons who were entitled only to get one pension ended up getting two pensions. I became aware of this fact when problems surfaced at the Barbados Port Authority when I was in private practice. And I know how much torment it caused at that place. I was in private practice at the time. So the problem is not a new problem. The problem is that, of course, the government of the day refused to fix it. And as a result, we find ourselves in a situation where we have had to come and to deal with it. But it is the height of national irresponsibility. It is the height of irresponsibility for any politician to come to a parliament in the year 2012 and to say that in circumstances where persons are receiving money they should not have been receiving in the first place, and in circumstances where the state is entitled to ask the persons who are receiving those monies to pay them back, but the state is waiving that right to suggest that the solution to that problem is to let the persons who are getting the pensions continue to get them, and let those persons who are not getting two pensions then begin to complain about discrimination and create all kinds of chaos in the system. We cannot run the public affairs of Barbados that way. And we therefore took the decision to bring that matter under some kind of control. We got very strong advice from public servants who indicated that to allow the situation to continue unattended would lead to a deepening crisis in terms of the expenditures of the government. So that is the reality on that. I am prepared to defend the government's position on that anywhere in Barbados, because quite frankly it is an injustice that was being done to the country as a result of the mistakes not created by politicians, but mistakes created as a result of a breakdown in communication between various departments of the government. But to stand up in this house, and to say, as some kind of political political gambit that if the Labour Party were to come back to power, it would give back these people the pensions. In other words, throw the law through the window, a law that was in existence since 1975. It's the height of irresponsibility. But such is the politics of the Barbados Labour Party, and of course from that politics we dissociate ourselves.
I'm sorry, that's a point of order. Yes, honourable member.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member is misleading the House, and not only as Prime Minister but as a former Attorney General ought to know better. A policy position prescribed by a party is then carried into law by bringing the bill to this House. So if a bill is brought to this House to grandfather the people who have had their pensions taken away from them wrongfully through no fault of their own, and who have for years been living on that pension, the government is entitled to change the law. This only convinces me, sir, that the government feels that they are powerless to bring any law to this Parliament.
Honourable member, please continue. No point of order.
I don't know the value of that intervention, Mr. Speaker. I really don't. That is part of the rag bag of which I spoke earlier. I don't know what's the value of that. But the point is, Mr. Speaker, that we have had, it has caused some pain to persons affected. It has caused some pain to us who have had to make the decision. It has caused pain to those who thought they should be getting two pensions because persons they knew well or they know well were getting two, and it's a matter which the government has had to resolve. Now, the budget of the year 2012 is this government's answer to the problems which Barbados, or the challenges which Barbados faces at the present time. The world is going through its worst crisis, as I said, in 100 years. Countries far more powerful, far richer, far better resourced than Barbados are experiencing serious challenges and have been for the last 4 years, upwards of 4 years. The connection between Barbados and some of the countries that are experiencing these challenges makes it necessary for Barbados to make certain adjustments. For example, we rely for our foreign exchange earnings on tourism, Mr. Speaker. The tourists who come to Barbados don't come from the Ivy or the Bayland or from Britain Hill or from through the bridge. They come from outside of Barbados. If the source markets from which those tourists come are experiencing serious challenges, those tourists will necessarily either be unwilling to come to Barbados, or if they are willing to come, they might be unable to spend at the level at which they would spend ordinarily. Such is the case with tourists coming out of the United Kingdom, which is now in a double-dip recession. The entire European Union is in chaos. Our second largest source market is the United States of America. In that country tonight, as I speak, over 40,000 people are on food stamps. 40 million people are on food stamps, I beg your pardon. And 16 million are unemployed. If they're unemployed or on food stamps, taking a holiday cannot be a priority for them. Coming to Barbados to spend a holiday cannot be a priority for them. And even if they decide to come to Barbados, if they're able to get here, they cannot spend as though life is normal back in their country. And then, Our third source market is CARICOM. CARICOM is composed of small, poor countries like Barbados. Many not doing as well as Barbados. It stands to reason, therefore, that what we get from the CARICOM countries cannot be rated in the same way as if things were normal in other parts of CARICOM. And our fourth largest source market is Canada. Now, for a while, Canada was doing quite well. Canada, because of certain built-in mechanisms of defense that Canada has been able to boast, was able to resist the onset of the global economic downturn. That has ceased to be so. And Canada is now beginning to feel the full effects of the global economic downturn. Add to that, Mr. Speaker, today, this very day, the BBC was carrying a story right through the day that confidence in the financial system, in the banking system in the United Kingdom and outside of it as well, was done some severe damage by the fact that a number of leading banks, including Barclays Bank, that one was named by the BBC, was corrupting the whole process of the rates at which lending between banks was taking place. That there was a virtual conspiracy between banks over the issue of the rates at which they borrowed money from one another. So that the LIBOR rate, the London interbank offered rate, on which we have placed reliance historically, even that now, one cannot implicitly trust because of the news which broke as recently as today. We live in a world that is beset by turmoil, a crisis of confidence, not only in the economies of the Western world, but also in the financial sector in the Western world. I sometimes wonder what somebody like Lenin would be saying today if he were alive and able to witness all of this, since he forecast that these crises would take place in the capitalist economy and in the banking sector and so on in his writings. But the crisis is with us. The crisis is with us, and we have to try and negotiate it. Now, in the face of those challenges, Mr. Speaker, Barbados has had to make some decisions. The decisions which Barbados has decided to make touch our economy, touch our society, and touch our environment. Because Barbados is committed to the goal of sustainable development. For years now, the Democratic Labour Party has taken the position that Barbados is not just an economy, it is also a society. Now, I have with me, Mr. Speaker, the manifesto of the Democratic Labour Party of 1976. I just want to show how far back this thinking goes. This is the 1976 manifesto of the Democratic Labour Party. On the fourth page of the manifesto is a section on philosophy, the philosophy of the party. And that section reads, in part, this is already a document of the House.
Yes.
Over the next 5 years, there will be a shift in emphasis in government policies away from infrastructural development and in the direction of making development an actual reality where it matters most. In the houses where the masses of people actually live, in the roads which lead to these houses, in the utilities of water, electricity, gas, and telephone servicing these houses, in the transport services available to really meet the needs of the people where they live and at the workplace, in the recreational facilities available to the people within easy access of their homes, in the provision of schools, day nurseries, and health facilities to meet the basic needs of the people in their community. Above all, the new strategy will reveal itself in a major thrust to provide employment for all those in this country of working age who are able and willing to work. For in Barbados, this is the Democratic Labour Party talking, Mr. Speaker. In Barbados, we will deviate from the classical model of considering development only in terms of stages of economic growth or in terms of per capita income, gross national product, and such lifeless concepts. Our strategy will be to make development mean a significant improvement in the quality of life where people actually live. This is as long ago as 1976. And that has been the philosophy of the Democratic Labour Party from then until now. Now, I came to this House, Mr. Speaker, for the first time in October 1994. And when I came to this House, I came as an opposition member. And the first speech I made in this House was on the throne speech presented by the Barbados Labour Party. My contribution was made on Tuesday, the 15th of November, 1994. And given the focus of the throne speech at that time, I had a few observations to make. And I'm going to read from page 262 of the Hansard of the Tuesday, the 15th of November, 1994. I said then, when one turns from the private sector to the service sector, what is the picture there? Again, as I have said earlier, the Democratic Labour Party has made its own contribution to the improvement of the service sector in Barbados. But we are talking today 28 years into our independence. And the question which we must confront is, are we doing the right thing in investing so totally in the services sector? What is our vision of Barbados in the 21st century? What is our vision of Barbados as we step on the threshold of the 21st century? Do we see a Barbados which is no more than an international service station at which vehicles from larger and wealthier nations pull up when it suits them to refuel, to get their windshields cleaned and their oil and water checked, then to pull off with patronizing expressions of gratitude after leaving a tip, sometimes large, sometimes not so large? Or do we envisage a Barbados in the 21st century which seeks to influence the course of international events and to get the world to respond as we want it to respond? We cannot have a limited view of our own capabilities as a small nation. And I went on to talk about how we had set examples through the work, the contribution, for example, of a man like Suki King. And then I concluded like this, Mr. Speaker. I asked the question, If an unpretentious young man from Barbados could do that, referring to Suki King, is it beyond the capacity of our economists? This is 1994. Is it beyond the capacity of our economists, for example, who boast so many letters behind their names and who have benefited so substantially from the efforts and sacrifices of the workers of Barbados to make their opportunities possible, to confront some of the more established orthodoxies of economics, for example, equilibrium price auction theory that creates and spawns monstrosities like recession, depression, stagflation, as the Honourable Member Philip West referred to earlier, and more recently, jobless growth, monstrosities that exclude large numbers of people from the mainstream of economic life. Is it beyond the capacity of our learned men to make contact with some of these problems and to ensure that they redefine them in such a way that the world gets a different view of solving social, economic, and political problems? I give that background, Mr. Speaker, because it has to be understood that the things that I say in politics in the year 2012, I was saying from the time I entered politics. I came to politics with a philosophy. Unlike the Honourable Member for St. Peter, who said he brought no social background to politics, all he brought were his skills as an economist. You said that and it was published in the newspaper, and we discussed it in 1994. The Honourable Member for St. Peter went public, there's newspaper record of it, that he brought no social background to politics. All he brought were his skills as an economist. We discussed that on platforms in 1994. Because you were ashamed of your social background. You only believe that you have a social background if you have come from a class other than the one from which you came. But I don't have that problem.
Yes, Honourable Member. Yes, Honourable Member.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the Honourable Member, sir, is not only misleading the House, he's deceiving himself. I have always said, sir, that I have come from a humble background, and I am proud of it.
No point of order for Honourable. Please continue.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. There is a way to prove all of this, and I am going to prove it in this House. I know what was said by the Honourable Member in 1994 and what was the subject of discussion on Democratic Labour Party platforms. As a result, it was published in the newspapers of Barbados in the same way that his vision for Barbados was to have a car park outside every household. That was published in the newspapers too. That's why we have, according to the Honourable Member's lights, a motor car democracy in Barbados. That was his vision of Barbados. That was his vision of Barbados. And I was not surprised because, and he can deny this one too,
Honourable Member, I'm not going to tolerate that foolishness shown across
He's hurting, Mr. Speaker, he's hurting.
I'm not going to tolerate it.
Let him hurt, let him hurt, let him hurt.
Please continue.
In the same way that in 1995, he prostrated Barbados before the Inter-American Development Bank in a letter he wrote to Enrique Iglesias. Deny this one now. Promising and committing the government of Barbados to creating an environment in Barbados, inclusive of which, or part of which the environment would involve the lands of Barbados fetching their highest value in the marketplace. Deny that. I have the letter you wrote to Enrique Iglesias. It's not a record.
Not yet.
You will see it, don't worry. You will see it.
Yes, I remember.
With the Inter-American Development Bank.
I remember
He's misleading the House.
I don't remember what was the point.
Remember, is misleading the House.
That's it.
The investment sector loan signed between the government of Barbados and the Inter-American Development Bank was negotiated by the Democratic Labour Party as the IDB's contribution to solving Barbados' problem out of the 1991 international recession. And we had to follow through on commitments given.
I don't remember. Please take your seat. No. I remember. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, I hope the honourable member is in this House when I bring the letter and make it a document in this House. I hope he does not deny his own signature. I hope he does not deny his own signature. To be quite frank, when the honourable member stood up just now, I did not think he was standing on a point of order. I really didn't think so. I thought he was standing at last, to let this House and all Barbados know the names of the persons that appear on the FBI report that he said he commissioned in Barbados, and that he said that he received the Honourable Member St. Peter. I thought that you sat on national television with Peter Thorne and said that you have an FBI report on your desk.
Mr. Speaker, sir.
Okay, please, let's have some order.
The member, sir, is misleading the House.
Yes, I remember. Let's see. Okay, honorary members, please, let's have some order. Let's have some order.
Mr. Speaker, sir.
Let's have some order. Yes, I remember.
The member, sir, is misleading the House.
Yes.
I came back from abroad and heard that there might have been an FBI report among them. There was not one. Sir, there was never an FBI report on my desk. A report was carried in the newspaper to the effect that there might have been an FBI report, and I said, I responded, if there is one, I would make it public. There was never an FBI report on my desk. If there is one now, this government has been in office for 4 years. Make it public.
No point on the phone. I remember. Please continue.
I really have not wanted to get into this. The honourable member went to Monterrey in Mexico to a conference. That may be, I'm misleading the House too on that, I suppose. Went to a conference in Monterrey in Mexico. Came back to Barbados. Was interviewed by Peter Thorne at CBC and said to this nation, look this nation in the face. Look this nation in the face. And said that the report he commissioned from the FBI on corruption in Barbados he was aware it was on his desk, and that he has.
Honourable member, you have already risen on that point of order, and you have already risen out of order.
On a point
please
of order.
take your seat, honourable member.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I raised on a point of order.
Honourable member, please take your seat. Honourable member, please take your seat.
I can't commission an FBI report.
Honourable member, please.
I never commissioned an FBI report.
Honourable member, please.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
What is the point of order, honourable member?
The member is misleading the House.
He hasn't said anything else.
He said I commissioned an FBI report. I cannot commission, the government of Barbados, the Prime Minister cannot commission an FBI report. I did not commission an FBI report. I never said I commissioned an FBI report. That is misleading the House.
Honourable member, no point of order found. Please continue.
Mr. Speaker, I don't mind. Look, fortunately for me, I have access to all of the clippings on this issue. Fortunately for me, I will deal with this elsewhere. In fact, I will deal with it in here to the extent that one can deal with it in here, and I will deal with it wherever else I need to deal with it. Let the honourable member deny that as a result of my insistence on a platform in Eden Lodge that he produced the report, that he got an attorney at law to write me a letter, the same attorney at law that wrote me a letter on behalf of the Honorable Member of the Northeast, both that Honorable Member and this Honorable Member got the same lawyer to write me a letter telling me that they're going to sue me for defamation because of statements I made at Eden Lodge. And I called the lawyer and told him, look, no apology, no discussion of damages, no discussion of costs, go to court. I want both the Prime Minister and the Attorney General on the witness stand. And I didn't hear from him after that. I still have those letters too.
Oh, dear me.
We can talk about these things.
Of order.
Yes, I remember.
There has never been presented to me an FBI report. As the member, sir, is no, he can't finish with it, because if there was an FBI report put on the desk of the Prime Minister of Barbados, he is not the Prime Minister of Barbados, produce it.
Yes, I remember. Please continue.
One of the first things that, Mr. Speaker,